Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Truth Table. This is episode 70, People's Party of Canada candidates for Niagara Falls. It's going to be my guest tonight, and Dennis Wilson in St. Catharines, who I will bring on first. We're going to find out what compelled them to join the PPC. What about the platform that drew them to that particular party? I know the answer to that because I have the platform right here and I've read them all, and this is the only one that speaks to me, which is why I'm not going to have a liberal as a guest because I know what they say one thing and do another. So Ryan Anderson wasn't able to come, but you'll find him on the ballot for Niagara West. Peter Terrace, who could be coming on anytime, he's canvassing, but he represents Niagara South, and Dinah Althorpe, who's my riding, Niagara Falls and Niagara on the Lake. So we're going to have a chit chat with all of them, get to know them. So when you go to vote, you have a face and you know who you're voting for instead of just guessing. And we'll do that right after this. It's March 31st, the day before April Fool's Day. And I want to thank you all for joining us here tonight. And I'd like to welcome my first guest, Dennis Wilson from St. Catharines, representing St. Catharines for the People's Party of Canada. Welcome, Dennis, and thank you for coming on the show tonight.
It's good to be here.
So, what was
How
it
are
that
you?
com- I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm putting in a lot of hours. A lot of hours.
Did you get all your signatures yet for the 28th?
I'm pretty close. I haven't had a chance to tally up what they are at right now, but I'm pretty close.
That's good. That's good to hear. Because we need someone representing the people in St. Catharines. If you might have heard that it's a very woke city with woke city councilors on a local level. It's very woke. Matt Cisco is the mayor, and if they have their way, they'll have rainbow sidewalks everywhere. What is it that compelled you to get into politics in the first place?
Um, well, in the first place, I had a very good friend as a young person, 14 years old, and his mother ran for the Liberal Party, and he just said, "Come along, join us. We're doing campaigning," and I followed along and did campaigning. So, and ever since then, it's been an interest of mine.
Hmm.
I've pursued it from many perspectives over the years, and most recently, I'm finding that the traditional parties, they don't. I don't see them doing a very good job of representing people and taking the Canadian people on a very productive course. I think there's failings in our actual failings in our political system. I think it needs to be adjusted and tweaked to meet the needs of Canadians. I always think of it that something that's come out almost out of the Middle Ages, where um, the real basis for our parliamentary system was back in the 1800s. Um, I think we could do a lot to modernize and have a lot better form of government. And that's basically what I
Yeah.
pursue.
Yeah, I would agree with you. Oh, I forgot what I was going to say, which is really unusual. So, out of all the parties, what was it about the People's Party that really attracted you in their platform?
The other parties, the main parties, they're working towards an agenda. They have their goal in mind,
Hmm.
and they take it as their job to try and mold the Canadian population into the society, the ideal society that they have in their philosophy. Whereas the PPC, I think, is really directed towards representing their constituents
Hmm.
and saying the Canadian culture is not what we want it to be, but it is what it evolves to be dynamically out of our population. So I think over the last 8, 9, 10 years, we've gone through a very significant change in the makeup of the Canadian people,
Hmm.
with a lot of different ethnic groups, a lot of different cultures, a lot of different perspectives on things. And that to me means that we are a different Canada today than we were 8, 9, 10 years ago. And to a large extent, we have to make the best of that.
Yeah, it is different. I mean, I've seen it completely transform since I was a child. People didn't lock their doors when I was a child.
Yeah.
Now, here's a question for your voters, the voters in St. Catharines. Now, this might not work, but I'm just going to say, let's say St. Catharines was full of dairy farmers and chicken farmers, and they were supportive of the supply management, even though Maxine, wants to repair and fix that whole system because it's so corrupted. Would you vote for Max, or would you vote for your voters if they wanted this to stay?
As I come at it from two different sides. Um, One side of it you probably don't know is that I actually do sell farm eggs to people, and I don't do it through a marketing board or anything. We just have a small set of chickens, and we sell eggs to people to local customers.
Oh,
So
that's great.
I have my own perspective on it that way, and really I'm a person that I feel personally from my own um, preference in politics. I think, and something that I'd like to promote through the PPC, I think Canada, the way it is made up and structured, the fact that for our prime minister, who runs in a separate riding and is only elected by the people in that riding, um, I think a tremendous amendment to the way we govern ourselves would to be incorporate much more direct democracy. I think with the representation, especially of our prime minister being of the direct representation being so few people, that when we go about legislating and making laws for our people and for our country, I think it needs much more input from the people of the country. So I would like to see us moving towards more referendums to make decisions, to make policy, and in our government.
Yeah, and that's the same as the independent movie movement that's happening right now. They want a direct democracy and not be controlled by the whip when they so they can vote according to the best interests of their constituents. Are you concerned about the mail-in ballots and how they can be used to cheat?
I also have a very strong background in systems work, and I've seen tremendous benefits come out of some systems and when they're used properly. And I do think that they can put proper controls on a lot of systems. Um, I would like to see, well, You have to have proper controls not only outside with the public, but you have to have proper controls within the bureaucracy and the people that are running the elections and stuff. If they're cheating the system, then well, the system should be that they don't cheat it. Uh, there's a tremendous amount can be done. But I also hear the argument that paper ballots are the only way and the proper control on them. And I wouldn't deny that that may be the case. It just, I'm not too offset by things being handled with systems. I work with them very well. I know the securities on many of them, and it's not something that causes me a great deal of concern. I'm very open, but again, I would very much like to see and know what kind of controls are in place. Uh,
Yeah. Yeah, Maxine did show some concern about mail-in ballots that they could be used that way. Paper ballots are great because you can recount them if there is any issue and confirm. Mail-in ballots could be also the same, where you can make sure the person is alive. A lot of dead people voted for Biden last election, and we don't want to take any risks. We already know what the government, the liberals, are capable of with the lockdowns and the coercion. How
just
would the PPs go ahead?
just as an example, um, there are features on iPhones and all smartphones pretty much right now that in order to open up your phone to be able to do work on it, they have the biometric of using your fingertip. You're going a fingerprint match.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yep.
if we had voting happening where a person had to put their fingerprint in the system to be recognized before they could vote, that would be pretty strong control over it.
Yeah, that's true.
You'd have difficulty getting, well, I don't know if we'd have a rash of people harvesting fingerprints, but I tend to think that we would not, and that it would be a fairly secure system.
Hmm. Yeah, I had a lot of ideas go through my head. I think paper ballot is probably the most solid. With the Dominion machines, provincially in Ontario, they only keep them for so long, the evidence, and they destroy it, which I'm totally against. They should have it a few years, if not even a couple of elections, and just store them in case there's ever a dispute or anything. It can always be, I'm concerned about any technology. It was shown in court in the United States that the Dominion voting machines can be hacked, and someone proved it right in the courtroom and did it right in front of the judge to prove his point, and he was successful. But
Yeah,
I think that is the way where they can get what they want while giving us the illusion of choice. On a federal level, it's a little bit different. We do have paper ballots, and the only really way to cheat would be using AI to just find out who's voting for who in which riding, and they could just make that many mail-in ballots to make sure they win. So I mean, if they use the technology available, they could cheat very easily that way. And Maxine did tell me he was concerned about that. That was an issue for him with the mail-in ballots.
yeah. I don't know that. I think mail-in ballots could indeed be a problem because there's not all the controls on a mail-in ballot that would make it a very secure system. At least I haven't seen the controls followed well.
I think when the mail-in ballots come in, you have to make sure that they're a voter, they're alive, they're old enough to vote, and it's just a legitimate mail-in ballot. So they found so many that people that were dead for 100 years in the United States, they found a whole bunch of. So I know that cheating can happen because it did happen in the States. And I really think that we're at a point where we're dealing with criminals with the Liberal Party and the NDP alliance. They've
Mhm.
stomped all over our rights, calling the truckers insurrectionists. Carney was right there wanting to freeze the bank accounts. He was behind all of that and
Yes.
demonizing the truckers for just wanting to have the choice to say yes or no on a medical, experimental medical intervention.
Yeah. That aspect of them going after people's bank accounts
Mm-hmm.
was one of the greatest motivators to me to become more active, to get involved, to actually run in some elections. That was just an unacceptable breach of trust to go after the bank accounts.
I would have to agree for peaceful protesting. I've seen hours of videos in Ottawa, and it was very peaceful. People were happy. They were dancing to music. They had bouncy castles. It was not, insurrection is storming the Capitol, going in there, throwing everyone out, and taking over. That's a insurrection. It's a coup, and that never happened. It was a real protest. The only thing that was annoying would be the horns, and they even stopped that when they were asked to. So it was very respectful until the foreign troops came in from different regions, and that's who did all the bad things. Started beating up people. They weren't the local police. They were brought in from elsewhere.
Yeah.
And that was disappointing too. How they were responding to each other in 4chan or whatever chat. They were chatting about stomping on our head, and they were relishing in the violence that they were able to inflict on peaceful Canadians. So yeah, I think that motivated me too. I think I'm on the same page with you, where that was a real demonstration of abuse of power, something that and the People's Party is probably the only party that was against it, that spoke up openly about it,
Yes.
and
And
I respect
with
that.
with regards to the convoy, one of the things that of my own perspective on politics and the party is one of the things I think that our party should be doing. Again, I mentioned direct democracy, and an element that I like to mention, particularly with regards to the truckers convoy, is that in the legislation, in the Emergencies Act legislation, there's a requirement for a report to be delivered to Parliament. And I would like to see that legislation amended so that after the report is delivered to Parliament, that there be a referendum of the Canadian people asking them if they want an election or not.
Hmm.
I think it brings accountability to our Parliament, and it brings it back to accountability to the people. And I really think that's something we need, and we need to start looking at our laws being drafted in that sort of a sense, where it comes back to the people saying how they feel on how things are going.
Hmm. Would you vote to end official multiculturalism in Canada and preserve Canadian values and culture?
For many decades, uh, I developed, well, quite some time ago, I developed the view that is shared by many, that a difference between Canada and the States is that Canada, with its immigration, chose to go the route of the patchwork quilt, with all the ethnic groups coming in and maintaining their culture and their views and stuff, and then living together in harmony.
Hmm.
Whereas the American system was the melting pot. The immigrants go into the US, and the motivation is to adopt the American culture, the American way of doing things, the American presence. And over the decades, uh, watching what I have watched and evaluated at how it's worked for Canada, I think we've encountered many more problems and difficulties and
Mhm.
less blending of the people than has been achieved through the American system of melting pot. Um,
Yep.
and in my opinion, the patchwork quilt has not worked that well and is not servicing us that well. But I have hope because one of the things I am cognizant of and see a lot of the times when I'm out and around, especially in malls that are close to high schools and so forth,
Yeah.
the young people in Canada today are not one ethnic group. They're not one culture. They are friends among themselves. They are young people among themselves, and
Hmm.
they have their own identity. They have their own language, the way they speak to each other, which is not necessarily the way I spoke with my friends when I was young. They blend, they work together. I don't know that they see the ethnic differences. I think they see themselves as friends. And out of that, I expect there'll be a new culture, one that those of us that are of older generations really could not imagine. But I think the young people in this country are doing a marvelous job of integrating and developing common understandings, common beliefs, shared beliefs. It is different than I think our parents or many people have ever imagined. It is happening among our young people in this country.
Yeah. Well, I'm not against any other cultures, but although I don't believe in Sharia law and I don't want it coming here, I don't believe in honor killings or child brides or a lot of that particular culture. And even the Quran tells them to seek out Muslim countries to live in, and if they go into a non-Muslim country, that to respect their laws. So my concern is a Sharia law and a takeover, a replacement immigration policy. And that is my concern. What is your position on the WHO and the WEF and the UN, all these globalist um, um, institutions?
You mentioned the UN, which is a trigger word for me. I look
Yeah,
at, bringing it to the current situation. We have Russia invading the Ukraine.
right.
And I look and I look and I look and I hear nothing. I see nothing of the UN. Canada is putting money into the UN. I want to know where they are and what they're doing in these global situations.
Yeah.
The Hamas attack in Israel. No sign of, no hearing from, no press mention of the UN.
Hmm.
The UN
Yeah.
is not there. What
No.
is the UN doing? I am of a fairly strong opinion that the UN is non functional in the way that it was originally ideally designed and expected to work. It is
Yeah.
not. Practical fact of the matter is time to shut it down, time to write a new constitution for it, and maybe give it another try. But it is not working today, and it is not handling the situations like Russia, like Israel. They are not being handled, and there are probably so many others that we don't hear about in our media that should be handled by the UN, and the UN is not there. It leaves a person wondering, where are they? What are they doing? And what's happening to the money?
Yeah. It's like they're impotent. Like 65 wars happened under their watch, and they were supposed to be about peace. And the Security Council veto vote over everybody else is completely unfair. Everyone should be equal in the UN, and they're not. So
I
I
agree
agree.
with your I agree with your wording for it. Impotent.
They are impotent. But we do have Dinah Althorpe is here, and she will be representing my riding. So she's mine. I'm just kidding. So she's going to be on my ballot. Niagara on the Lake, too. If you're on Niagara on the Lake and Niagara Falls, she's our girl. She's our PPC girl. And I want to bring her on and ask her what compelled her to get involved with politics. What was it? Hello, Dinah. Welcome. You're on mute.
Oh, lovely. Great way to introduce myself. Awesome. Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Paul. I guess I
My
always grew up pretty political, kind of just generally like that. But I kind of thought to myself, do I want to further, I guess, just push the youth stereotype that we don't do anything, or that we don't care about politics, or that it's not up to us, or that we don't have anything going on. And I thought, you know what, I want to challenge that. I want to show that we're not like that we have the ability to get involved, that we want to get involved, and that we really do truly care about things that are going on in the world. And I thought that's going to be me.
Yeah. And what was it about the People's Party that brought you to that particular party as opposed to all the other ones?
So of course I liked basically they stuck up for us when nobody else would. Primarily Maxime. I mean, he was willing to, I guess, put his own freedom on the lifeline when it came to the mandates. Like he was the only one that had our back when there were those of us that couldn't get vaccinated or wouldn't get vaccinated, and we're going to lose either our schooling or our jobs. And I also am an example of somebody that wasn't able to go to school, at least right away, because of my vaccine status.
That's terrible. And and even the exemptions, he was the only voice. I mean, we had nobody else that was standing up for just uh, sacred bodily autonomy. Our body, our choice. What happened to that? That just went right out the window. It only counts when you want to abort a child, and
Yeah, it
but
seemed to
not.
only apply for that in
Yeah,
the
it's
general
absolutely.
public opinion.
So, how do you feel about the climate alarmism? Do you think it's ridiculous, or do you think they're radical?
I
And
don't, I'm not very really, like, I don't, it does, it doesn't, it annoys me, a lot of it. A lot of it is just ridiculous. We need, everybody has to have a small amount of, I guess, just our consumption or what we're doing in order to, I guess, just live life. We drive, we go places, we do things. You know what I mean? Are there people that are excessive, that maybe they do things or they have certain lifestyle habits that are a bit outrageous? Yes. But for those
mm,
of us that are, we drive our little like economy car, you know what I mean, our little tiny car, to work or school or whatever, and we're not really, you know what I mean? It just seems like it's pushed on those of us that aren't necessarily being like a wasteful or consumable person. And also, you find that there's a lot of hypocrisy with that, because there will be people that will complain about climate alarmism, but then they also contribute to so much production. Like people that buy a new cell phone every year when one comes out, when theirs was fine, or a new car every 2 years. You know what I mean? This so much
mhm.
production and things that goes on in the world, when like it's the people that are complaining about it so much of the time that are still contributing to it and not changing their lifestyle.
Yeah, right. Same question to you, Dennis. How do you feel about the climate change agenda?
I was just thinking about that. About a year ago, I went, I using AI, I posed the question to AI, um, looking for what was the average or what was the best concentration of CO2 in the air to produce to maximize production of vegetation. And on an annual average, we're still a couple of degrees below, or a couple of measures below, um, optimum CO2 for the atmosphere to be in a position where it would produce the best amount of vegetation. So we're busy cutting back on something that we could actually use more of. in a global sense. And I also looked at global temperatures, global warmings, and I didn't do it for this number of years back or that number of years back. I did it from ice age to ice age. And we have things that happen to the Earth. They can get hit by a comet, an asteroid, and that throws a bunch of dust and stuff up in the air, and it blocks out the sun, and we end up with ice ages, or it can be extreme volcanic situations that throw a lot of ash into the air and block
Yeah.
out the sun and cause coolness.
Hmm.
So I went from ice age to ice age, and what would be the average temperature between the ice ages? Um, where did they, where was a median to look at that would say, okay, we can expect this is going to happen as we come out of another ice age? And that's what I found was the situation. We're still coming out of another ice age, and we have yet to get to the average temperature for between those ice ages.
Hmm.
So are we going to beat nature at its own cycle of cooling and warming? I don't think so. And I don't think we'll do it with a carbon tax. There are things that are going to happen, and we need to adapt and adjust to what is going to happen, because in my world, in my opinion, we are not a match for Mother Nature. Mother Nature is far more powerful than we are. And if Mother
Right.
Nature says I need to go up a couple of more degrees before I'm at average, Mother Nature is going to go up a couple of more degrees, and there's not much we can do about it except adapt and adjust to the situation as it's going to be.
Yeah. Yeah. I think. Do you think it's a money grab, Dinah?
It
The
seems like
climate change.
yeah, it does seem like a big money grab for a lot of, I guess, just green energy, or you know what I mean? Like, I guess whatever you would want to say the replacement would be for any kind of thing that we're doing that has some kind of like consumption or production. For example, like gas cars versus electric cars, right? It does sound like a big money push for something, whereas in reality, the consumption or I guess environmental harm could be a lot higher on those things, such as electric cars, like all the nickel that has to be mined to even make those things.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. If Maxime gets a majority government, and he could, I mean, you never know. I mean, that would make sense to me. It makes sense to me. That's why the media is attacking and like trying not to bring him up or talk about him whatsoever,
They're
because
trying
I
to
think they're
pretend he
all.
doesn't exist.
But if you had legislation come to you and you had a vote to balance the budget, how would you vote?
I'm sorry, a vote to balance the budget?
Yeah, would you
Of
vote
course.
for that?
Of course. We need something sustainable. We need something that's just easy for everybody. We need something that's not so wasteful on taxes. We need
Mhm.
things to be more, I guess, just straight up, you know what I mean, simple, not, I guess, just not taking money from people that have worked so hard to earn it. Like if you think about it this way, in simple terms, a liberal government is very liberal with your money, and some would say a conservative government is very conservative with your money. Well, not, I guess, the conservatives, but I guess a PPC government, you could say, or the real conservatives, whatever you want to say. But yeah,
Mhm.
we need financial literacy.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, we have to do it in our homes. If we don't pay our rent, we're on the street. Dennis, what's your feelings on the equalization payments between provinces?
You're
Do you think
somebody
that
who's, I was born and raised in Alberta,
oh,
and
that's the province that's getting robbed?
it's a hot question. I phone home, I phone family, relatives, friends in Alberta, and I talk to them, and I know that in Alberta it's a hot issue. It's something they're
Yeah.
talking about. It's something they're looking at very seriously.
Hmm.
Um, and I turn around and I talk to my neighbors here, and they haven't heard of a situation at all. So Our media is not doing a very good job of informing the country as to what's going on in our fellow provinces, neighboring provinces. The communication is just not good because the reality is not being shared. And um, I think that is a true failing of the media, and that's going to lead to problems and difficulties of moving ahead regardless, because there will be people that are very upset about situations and another group of people that say, why, what's wrong? It's
Hmm.
just not shared.
I think it's terrible. I really do. I think Alberta should just stop because really Quebec is pillaging Canada just like they did in Haiti. Many it took Haiti 100 years to buy its freedom from France, and I think France is a part of the Laurentian power in Canada behind the stopping Quebec from developing itself so it could be a have not and just sit down and collect money from Alberta because they get a lot of money from Alberta and it's very unfair.
I'd like to weigh in on this just one more time with another element.
Sure.
We have in our Constitution already something that is was entered to really handle the type of situation we're talking about.
Hmm.
And that part of our Constitution that really addresses this kind of issue is the part of the Constitution that says there will be free travel between provinces.
Hmm.
And coming from Alberta, I've seen it in Alberta. I've seen people come from other parts of Canada to Alberta because that's where jobs were, that's where money was, that was so forth. It was a great political trick to not rely on the openness and the freeness to move between provinces to one that said, okay, we'll just move the money. You can stay where you are, we'll just move the money.
Hmm.
And I can't see that today as being as good a solution as the one that says, okay, you're not good here with your economy, but there is great economy over there. You move
Hmm.
if you want that type of economy.
Yeah. Yeah. So as of now, the laws. This question will go to you, Dinah. The laws basically will put a father in prison if someone breaks into your home and they get in a scuffle and the person breaking in gets harmed. Basically, the whole family will lose that father because of the laws in Canada. So, Dinah, would you support allowing people to defend themselves and
We need
protect themselves?
self-defense laws for Canadians. Absolutely.
Self defense, yeah. I think that's a huge problem. Not being able to defend yourself in your home on your
Major.
own. It's horrible. I don't know how they get away with this stuff, but
I don't know.
nobody's in the parliament fighting against it. There's nobody. We have nobody, but Maxime is like the only one, the only party that would actually reinstate the ability to defend your home. I
I feel
mean,
like
my
there's some kind of inside deal or corruption going on because to the average person, and you would think even maybe at least maybe one or two, I guess liberal NDP conservative MPs, there has to be at least one or two that would think that does sound a little bit outrageous. You know what I mean? Just not even to do with politics, not even to do with, your, I guess, your faith, anything like that. Just to the average person, you would think if there's somebody in my home that is robbing me and or trying to hurt me and I have no ability to defend myself, or then I'm not allowed to legally, that sounds a bit bizarre. So I would
that's
assume like that there's has to be some kind of somebody's being given something, somebody's being paid something. It just doesn't add up. You would think at least maybe five, and even that's quite low out of 338 people would have thought that doesn't sound okay.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense at all. It just seems like we're not represented at all.
Yeah.
That
Or there could be maybe that
there is
70%
gen-
conformity rule coming into play, maybe. And even that would be generous, though. You know what I mean? The 70% conformity rule in psychology, that generally most people will just kind of go along with the crowd, what's going on. But then you'd still think out of 338, not one person, thought, hey, this doesn't sound right. We should speak up against this. Just doesn't add up.
I'm going to ask you both, starting with you, Dinah, about freedom of speech. Do you think the government has a right to censor us on Facebook, for example? So we can't post the media or anything right now. It's very limited what we can speak about. So would you be all for freedom of speech, even if it's not um, comfortable, or even if it's uncomfortable?
Well, I understand that there are certain restrictions on social media platforms based on like inciting somebody to commit
Yeah.
violence or any kind of, I guess, not just civil disobedience, but straight up breaking the law, counseling, conspiracy, like to commit some kind of crime. There's that. But
Mhm.
overall, just your opinions, your faith, your beliefs, your politics, what I mean, the kind of person you are, we shouldn't be restricting that.
And I want the people of Niagara and the Lake to know that. That's what
Yes.
you're voting for, freedom of speech. But yes, absolutely. If there's threats and stuff like that, then it
Yes.
should be dealt
So
with the
I
proper
understand
channel.
that. Yeah, like a general standpoint, there's some things you gotta, take care of. And of course, the platforms already do that. You can
Yep.
report it if somebody is
Yeah.
basically, yes, inciting somebody to commit a crime or yeah, conspiracy to commit crime, counseling, parties to an offense, etc., things like that. But the
Yep.
social media platforms do take care of that themselves. Um, and then of
I think.
course local law enforcement, whichever, any kind of governing authority takes care of that. Furthermore, if it's in use for like a court case, like if
Mm,
there was proof on social media that somebody was counseling someone to commit crimes, um, that would, I guess, be forwarded over to whichever applicable authority and whichever jurisdiction, and then that will be taken care of. But when it comes to freedom of speech, you're not talking about breaking the law, you're not doing any of that, but just, your beliefs, what you love, what you care about, who
mm,
you love, and you know what I mean, why you're here, what you do. We're not restricting that. We're not restricting that.
mhm.
Well, we shouldn't be restricting that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't think so either. Did you
Mm-hmm.
want to add anything to that, Dennis, about freedom of speech?
Uh, an aspect that wasn't mentioned that um, I consider also that is properly placed when it's restriction on speech, and that's sexualization of children. I do think that we need to protect our children from things that can be happening on the internet. And other than that, I think that um, the more you cut back freedom of speech, the more you damage your economy and the ability to advance the economy. The free exchange of ideas is one of the most powerful things we have. And to curtail it, to hold it back, block it, is only to work against us.
And well, how about firearms? They want to get rid of everybody's ability to have firearms. And that's usually a bad sign if you look at history. After they take their guns, they do horrible things to the people. So that is my main concern. Is that your concern as well?
They're making laws to block the law abiding.
Yeah.
Um, I've I take note of gun crimes when when they're brought forward in the news media, and I can't recall any gun violence attributable to legal owners of guns.
Yeah.
So all we've done is harassed and harangued and imposed uh, laws on law-abiding citizens that didn't need the laws. Meanwhile, the crooks and the criminals, they haven't been bothered at all because they're not part of any legal aspect of society in the way they use their guns. The guns aren't legal. It's the crooks and criminals and not the law-abiding people. And I lived and worked in the wild for a period of time as well when I was young. And there were times when I needed to, we had garbage bears in the national park, and we needed to eliminate them. We needed to get them out of the campgrounds and out of the garbage dumps where people were at risk. And some animals you just couldn't control. So they were shot. I know how to use a rifle, and I don't think it's a bad thing. I don't own
Hmm.
one. I don't feel I need one. But if I'm alone in the wild dealing with bears and other animals, I think it's only reasonable and sane to protect yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. You have to protect your bodily autonomy, right? If someone comes after you.
Yeah, I don't know that people sitting in Ottawa really understand that uh, people living in the remote parts of Canada have to deal with the wild as it is. And
Mhm.
man is another animal walking the forest with the other animals, and there's a competition. If man doesn't protect himself, then a wolf, a mountain lion, a bear, they'll take care of you, sort of,
Mhm.
to their benefit.
Yeah, yeah. Well, the People's Party is the only one that will allow the oil and gas industry to grow. Now, what are your feelings on that? Having a pipeline across the country, northwest, north, south, east, west.
I'm thinking that we're missing one that goes from Fort McMurray to Churchill.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, and we could refine our oil and gas. We could do all of that here instead of just sending bitumen to America. You know, we could
And
refine it here.
I think we need to see more of what's happening with St. David's greenhouse growing of veggies.
Hmm.
I've seen tropical environments growing inside glass pyramids. I think we can look at some of the we could be looking at some of that gas being used to do greenhouse operations in otherwise hostile parts of the country. We could be growing more food.
Hmm. And Dinah, you're all for repealing all bad legislation, anything that violates, personal freedoms, personal rights, and vote. You will vote them out of the, vote against them.
Of course, like I understand that there are some that aren't related to freedom. It's just a general kind of like, you know what I mean? Certain things are governed differently. Um, but of course, like just at a general standpoint, your freedom to, your freedom to work, your freedom to free speech, your freedom of, just general, yeah, of course. But then I understand that everything certain things could be repealed for like I guess a particular individual if they had violated something or they were a threat to national security. So for that, like
Mhm.
I could understand why something on just a case to case basis, something could be just changed. But of course, in like a general standpoint of you know what I mean, you're it's a free country. It's an
Yeah,
absolutely free country.
and it's simply just reinstatement of Section 13 of the Canadian Human Rights Act and repeal Bill C-16 and Motion M-103. Are you also for abolishing media welfare,
Media welfare.
like financing the CBC, for example? I think that's a conflict of interest for the government in power to give billions to CBC or
Yes.
CBS.
Yes,
So you
because
would
well,
be,
I mean, really anything, any news that isn't a government press release, absolutely. Because well, now they're more likely to act in the best interests of the government as opposed to interests of the citizens. Regardless of what the government's opinion is. If they are a government news, forum or government, press release
mhm.
issuing type of thing, then that's what I mean? That, of course, we know that. But any kind of, I guess, person that or news source that claims to be independent or it claims to be just government free, and then now they're acting alongside that or they're teaming up. Now it feels kind of like we've been cheated. And that goes for any type of party in government. It doesn't matter which party would be in government, it still is a conflict of interest. Because now that news source is a lot more inclined to, I guess, just report on the opinions of the government as opposed to the reporters themselves, especially when they're being paid.
Well, I can tell you firsthand that the government does not support the truth table. Dennis, do you how are you feel about the media welfare? Did you want to add anything to that? The funding.
I don't. I think to a large extent, well, where my mind goes to when you start mentioning things like that is CBC,
Hmm.
and I am appalled by the amount of money that's given CBC and what it fails to do, and how it needs more money. Um,
Hmm.
I'm appalled at the salary that the top person in CBC is getting for a failed operation, something that needs to be supported by public funds. It just it doesn't make sense to me. Really doesn't. It doesn't seem reasonable that we would do that. And also, I've gone to look for um, Canadian news, Canadian weather, and I can't find, even in the Niagara area, I can't find a CBC station that will give me the weather, the news on a 24-hour basis. Uh, there's news channels that will do it, but we can't do it with the CBC for the Canadian people, for the tax dollars we invest. That bothers me.
Yeah. So if me and Dinah came to your farm, would we get a discount on your eggs?
You're getting a discount pretty much at the price I sell them.
Oh, all right, all right. And I'm assuming they're free range and healthy chickens.
They're good chickens. They're nice chickens.
Awesome, awesome.
I speak to them every morning when I go in.
Aw.
They are loved.
That's awesome. That's what they need. They need love. Do you think
They're
it's important? Do you think it's
Something else.
important?
Something else I'd like to share about my eggs is
Yes.
my eggs come in many colors. They come in blue and green and light brown and dark brown,
Blue?
and they come in many sizes.
If you would have said purple, I would have freaked out. But blue? How do you
Yeah,
get a blue egg? Is
you
that
get
from what they
the right breed of chicken.
Oh my goodness. Man, now I want to see your chickens because they must be
one
very
love.
special.
We
Silly
believe in fun.
Well, that's good.
We have fun farm eggs.
Now, do you believe in responsible immigration
Yes, absolutely.
and fit it towards how much we have available, how many houses we have available to rent, and just a responsible immigration? I think you're the only party that holds that standard. Everyone else is open border. It's like what you are the only hope for Canada right now. I mean,
One of the
you
things that I think needs to be mentioned when you start talking, well, you're talking immigration, but you mentioned housing and the
yes,
housing crisis in the country.
yes.
And I think it's curious that there would be so much federal campaigning on the housing crisis, and that because housing and property is a provincial jurisdiction.
Mm-hmm.
If a person really wants to address that issue, they need to be talking with their um, provincial members, representatives.
But
That's
really,
that's
it's the federal government is the one pushing the immigration on the provinces.
the
But yeah, you're
immigration
right. It's
is a
not fair.
government immigration.
Yeah,
And if I can share a quick story, I hope.
absolutely,
Um,
sure.
I was in China, and I was in Beijing in China, and there was some construction going on someplace down the road. And where I was, there was a caravan, a solid chain of bicyclists. And on the back of their bike, there was a small carrier, and they were carrying bricks, little pack of bricks, and they were going from further away than I could see coming, and further away than I could see going. And it was just a solid chain of bicycles moving bricks. Hundreds of people pedaling bicycles, moving bricks. And then I started thinking about how would that be done in Canada? And in Canada, a truck would pull up with a flatbed with a whole bunch of pallets of bricks on it, and he'd maybe drop the flatbed, and then a one person with a forklift would come along and take those pallets of bricks off the truck, and they're on the site ready to be used. So you're talking about hundreds of people doing a job, and you're talking about two people doing a job. And in China, you maybe employ an extra 200 or some people working because people get sick, people have days off, people whatever, but there's only, there you can have lots of backup and lots of people employed, and still the wages are so low that it's economical. In Canada, you're going to have those two people, and you're probably not even going to hire backup for them. You just have two people doing that amount of work. And I think we don't understand the way technology is going and the way things are done in Canada compared to the way things are done in other places in the world, especially places that are southern and
Mm-hmm.
have more or less year-round hospitable temperatures. In
Mm-hmm.
Canada, we have a short amount of time where the weather is not severe. And even in farming, computers are taking over the equipment. They have navigation systems that can run a tractor, a combine, whatever, over a large field with nobody in the cabin driving the vehicle. The computers can do it. So
Mm-hmm.
if you're bringing in population, you have to figure out, okay, what are they really going to do and what is happening? The automobile plants in Ontario used to employ tens of thousands of workers. Now we'd be lucky to know that I don't know if they're working on 2,000 or 3,000 people in a car plant doing the same production that used to be done by tens of thousands.
Mm-hmm.
You you really have to consider the country really needs has to consider what kind of work, how do we do things in Canada, and how do we support it in Canada. Uh, just bare economic theory does not necessarily apply.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did we talk about foreign aid? I can't remember if we
No, we
touched on
haven't
that.
touched foreign aid. No,
So, how do you feel about foreign aid? Do you think we should stop all of it?
no. Something that I carry with me. I'm a Canadian who actually ended up working in the States for a number of years. 12 years I worked in the States, And for the first few years that I was in the States, I was really out of place uh, in the aspect of charity. Um, the American people are amazing in their charity. And in Canada, there is such a strong attitude of the government will take care of it that
Yeah.
I actually carry a preference for charity as it is. And if we want to donate to something, I don't think we should be paying tax dollars to fund things that are somebody in Ottawa's prize project.
That's what
I
I'm afraid
say
of.
let that money stay in our pockets. And when we see the need, we should be learning. And I think in Canada, we really do need to learn to be more charitable. And I think we'll only learn to do that if we can keep the government out of it and do it ourselves.
No, I think that's a great idea because I think what we've been doing is propping up tyrannical governments. They're paying for countries to, implement the DEI and the gender agenda ideology. And that's what we're funding, and it's not by consent. I think foreign aid would be best served if a country needs food or a humanitarian help, but to just fork out billions and just hand it over to the government. A lot of even charity companies that have taken food and send it to other countries, it's getting stolen by the military, so it's not even getting to the people. So I would like to see a responsible foreign aid that actually helps people. Would you agree with me, Dinah?
We need a foreign aid that needs to be more. Sorry, you were saying?
Just responsible, that's humanitarian instead of pushing an agenda like DEI,
Oh,
diversity,
of
equity.
course. Oh, of course. Like, wasteful, there's so much, there are just so many wasteful programs and things that I just don't, they just shouldn't be funded. There's just so much that we don't need that is just being, or I guess is just being pushed on us, but that's going on right now. And then also, think about it this way. What about there are so many charities, I guess just various organizations that do great work. But think about it, that's optional. If I say, if a certain charity comes and, asks you for a donation either online or in person, you have the choice. But so much of the time, people think to themselves, oh, I can't give a $5 donation because I'm giving hundreds of thousands, or I guess just thousands of dollars, hopefully, not super, not too many, not too much money is being given away with their money, but they're thinking, I already gave so much money away to taxes that has already gone there. I can't help anyone right now. And then it kind of gets rid of that kind of personal, kind of touchy feeling moment of, I like this charity. I love the work they do. They resonate with me and I want to help. They're not able to do that.
Yeah, I agree. Well, I want to thank you both for coming on. Is there any final words that you'd like to say to your voters before we end this particular show? I may ask you both to come on at a different time at another roundtable. I want to get if you're a candidate running in the People's Party or the Libertarian Party and you want to get some exposure, contact me on Facebook, Paul Everton, and I will get you in because we need to get the right people exposure and let the people that are voting know who they're voting for ahead of time. But yeah, contact me. Thank you both. Dinah, is any final
Absolutely.
words?
Yes, I'm very happy. I'm so happy to be here. I'm very excited to be running. And if anybody in my constituency or even just the Niagara region would love to meet me or have a chat, or I guess just learn what I'm about, or even, can we do a little bit of self promo?
Yes, for sure. Jason's
Okay.
running. I'll have
Okay,
to get
so
Jason
Paul is
on the show.
very prepared and he knew to put all my socials right here, so they're right in front of you right now. No, I'm just kidding. Um, No. But yeah, you can just find me, Instagram, just full name at Dinah Althorpe, Twitter at Dinah Althorpe, feel free to send me a DM, if you want to chat, understand what I'm about, how I'd feel, if you would like to volunteer for my campaign as well, feel free to reach out, Dennis, the mic is yours for your self promo, whatever you like.
How do people find you?
Say again.
How can they? Do you have an X account or anything? Because I'll tag you both on this, on X. So I got her X already, so I can
Twitter,
tag.
thank you. I still make the mistake.
I have an X account. It's been so long. I haven't worked with the X account since I was campaigning in Toronto, St. Paul.
So you don't
But
follow me on X. I see how it is. No, I'm just kidding.
I will.
I keep calling it Twitter, but it's X. But no, follow me back.
Yeah. He should have left it the way it was. But
I'm just not used to it. And think about it this way: people used to say, like, well, this is like when it was considered like trendy, like 10 years ago, and people say like, I'm tweeting now. What do you? I'm Xing. Like, how do you? Well, I mean, people don't go around and say, look, guys, I'm tweeting, but like, what's the term? What is the term? Jason St. Louis, absolutely. I would love that. I saw his chat there. He would love to talk.
something that I'd like to try and end with
for
is
sure.
through a campaign, we've got all sorts of candidates out there asking people to believe in them. And I would like to send a message to my constituents. To them, my message would I believe in you. And speaking from a person that really favors and thinks an answer for Canada is more direct democracy, I think it's important to believe in the constituents.
100%.
Yeah.
It starts at home. It starts at home. It starts with you. People think, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? You are everything. You are anything and everything. Like it's people just don't understand how much we love them, how much we support them, how strong-willed they are, and how easy it is for them to make a change. I guess and that doesn't even just go for politics. That goes for any kind of issue or just, I guess, social problem going on in the world. And yeah, they need us more than ever, really. We need them more than ever.
And that's kind of why I'm here too, because I care. I'm here because I care about all the people in the world, not just Canada. I do care about the conditions in Canada, but wars and participating in wars in other countries, I don't appreciate, because to me, everyone is precious. Every living soul, every baby is precious. It doesn't matter where they were born. Doesn't make them evil because of the geographical birth area. I think we all have good, and all have potential for good. And these two, my guests, are putting their names on the line in an election that could be rigged. I, I don't want to jinx it, but I do want to see seats. I want to see lots of seats, and I wish you both seats in this election on 28th. Yes. And I'm behind you 100%. I want to thank you both for coming on the show, and I hope that you'll return if it comes to that. I would love to have you back on again to share more about yourself and let people know who you are and have a face behind the name on a ballot, because you're not just a name or a number.
Yes, so absolutely. We put our faces on the sign, but I guess that's not trendy anymore, at least in my writing. None of the signs have faces on them. Where did it go? It's a dying art.
Yeah. When I ran, they took my face off. They said it'd probably be better if you didn't use your face.
No, I know. I'm
kidding. I have a bad habit of humor with self-deprecation, and I know I shouldn't do it. But it's just so I don't have to go after anybody else, and I could just hurt myself, But I do appreciate you both, and I want to thank you both for running because it does take courage. It does take courage to do such a thing. And everyone's looking at you, judging you, looking for errors and looking for imperfections. And that's not why we're here. We're here because of the platform. Not because of Maxime, but because of the platform itself. And that's what I hope. I hope we've helped all the voters in the area, in my riding, to make the right decision this time and get people that aren't voting to vote, because the winner in the Ontario election was the non-voters. The people that didn't vote got over 50%. That's got to stop. We've got
Good
to
to know.
activate. We got to activate the sleepers and realize that there's no more time left. So thank you both for coming on the show, and I hope to see you both again very soon, and I wish you the best on the 28th.
Thank you so
Thank you.
much, Paul. It was lovely to have this chat.
Yes, anytime. And thank you all at home for coming to the Truth Table. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Truth Table. I'm Paul Everton, and I'm just making an announcement here. April 28th, my StreamYard account expires. And I know I don't ask for money, and I don't have any sponsors. I don't ask for any sponsors because the Truth Table was based on giving people information, the true meanings of words, symbols, all sorts of things. I'm going to do one on my biblical translations before the 28th, but I will keep streaming. But I'm not able to pay the. I'll show you. It's $431.88 to renew. Now, if I don't renew, the only thing that'll change is the quality of the screen. I won't have my logo anymore. It will go back to this again. So that's not so bad. So I'm putting it in God's hands because it doesn't matter. I still will be able to continue. The only other thing is the quality of the recordings won't be as good anymore either. But if there's more information that I feel needs to get out, I will. Luckily, my account will be wide open until the election is over. So I'll be able to get lots of shows in and candidates so the voters can meet these people. I will put my e-transfer down here somewhere. If you want to help, you're welcome to. I'm not going to ask for money, but if I reach that amount, I will. What I will do is during every show, I will post where I am at the target, if I reach the target or not. So I will be really transparent about any donations that do come in. And if I reach the target, I will renew or even get really close. Then I will cover the rest. And then I will continue to use my own logo and have be able to have as many more guests and that sort of thing. But I'll leave it in God's hands. And if it doesn't happen, the Truth Table is not necessarily going to end. It'll just be the free account, and that's okay. That's okay. That's why I put it in God's hands. Anyway, thank you.